Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Dresser, and I'm chairman of the Northern Arapaho Tribe, and I would like to thank all of you for attending today's session. It's an honor to sit on the panel with these very strong Indigenous women, Yufna Soldier Wolf, who you'll meet, and also Crystal Seabearing. Women have always been, especially in the Northern Arapaho Tribe, right there along with our leadership because they're the ones who dictated a lot of the things that we did. And I think that the strength of this session talks about that and how Yufna and other individuals in our tribe really paved the way for us to bring back home our children who died in Carlisle. And like all of us, we experience intergenerational trauma every day. And up in Canada, we saw what happened with the residential schools and unearthing over 700 kids up there. And I think that in the last year, it's really been amplified and out there more to the people and the world about what happened here. And I think that the reason why we want to do this panel was to tell the story of how the tribe successfully repatriated all our human remains, but also how it opens up the door for healing. And ultimately, that's what all this is about, is closing these cycles and these doors so our people can be their highest selves. So as the chairman of the tribe, I see that every day, and I'm just honored to be here and highlight the story and how we continue to grow. So thank you.
Dos spesi ne te ena nanana hinane e na te nanana hinane ena. Hello, all my relatives. My name is Yufna Soldier. It's good to see everybody here today. I think Jordan kind of said it all. I feel very honored to be able to sit here today and actually say we did it. This was successful with the help of Jordan, with the help of Crystal, with the help of our tribe, with the help of our elders. It was a monumental task, and it took 134 years to get this far. But that's something we'll go into as we talk. I want to talk too long in my introduction. Go ahead, Crystal, and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Dos Niake Natana, Nasina, Crystal Seabearing, Nanana, Hanane, Nanatne, Nisithena, Hinane Nina, Northern Arapaho, Nanana, Deputy Director. So good morning, my relatives. My name is, I'm the Deputy Director for the Northern Arapaho Repatriations. I am so honored to be here on this panel with these two individuals, these great individuals for our people, great leaders, and I'm just excited to be a part of everything and welcome you all.
So as we move forward and talk about the successes, there's some things that I will kind of just get into a conversation about if that's one of the things we wanted to do. And then later as we go on, Crystal's going to share the trailer for the video, the documentary that Chairman Dresser has made to follow up. And one of the successes for Carlisle was really in the making. It was generations and generations. I believe this is supposed to play on November 23rd, home from school. Being a part of that, we'll kind of get to that conversation. But I kind of want to see where everybody feels right now. Crystal, if you wanted to kind of go into talk about Carlisle first, but then get into the current and then the current repatriations along with Black Coal's repatriation.
Good morning. So with our repatriation for Carlisle, I think it was a lot of efforts over the years and generations of efforts, I would say, that really paved the way for this, and just didn't take no for an answer. And that's pretty much what it was. And it was a lot of resiliency and just going after and wanting our children back. I think that was the main thing. And these were our, our ancestors. Um, and a lot of times, even within reservation schools, a lot of this isn't taught in our schools. A lot of it's not. I didn't know until I went into college that there was these things that happened. No, we didn't really get into the details of everything until I got into college and kind of start learning there about our history and what happened. And so I think it's just an educational tool. It's something to tell our students now, that what's coming up and how we've been so resilient and advocating for our people, for our youth. There's been a lot of other repatriations that I've been a part of. I've been with the Tribal Historic Preservation Office for almost 5 years now. Yufna hired me. And I just started getting into the whole NAGPRA repatriation, just kicked it off the ground. It was a really quick learning process. She showed me so much. We've went to museums, we had consultations, we did repatriations. Me and Jordan did a lot of repatriations together, traveling with our ancestors on airplanes, driving them across the country, to bring them back home, to rebury them, to complete their life cycles basically, and to let them rest. And so I've been on quite a few repatriation efforts throughout these 5 years, which I think has been a really healing process for me. And it feels good to be a part of that, to lay our ancestors to rest finally, that have been sitting on shelves for years and years, decades and decades. And it's just good to have that. And the reason why, we do focus on human remains for repatriations right now is because we don't have a facility to store artifacts or sacred objects, items of cultural patrimony. And so we're working towards that. So that's right now with the Northern Arapaho tribe is our priority is human remains, and repatriating and allowing them to be at rest. And we just think ethically, like there's no reason why any of our ancestors should be sitting on shelves in museums and universities, to today. There's no reason why we've been studied so much. We've been poked and prodded. Like I don't think there's not much more you can do. We're all human, and so that's kind of the direction we've been going in for these past few years. And I can turn it over to Jordan if you'd like to add anything.
Being able to repatriate Chief Black Hole's headdress was such a huge moment for us. And I think it speaks about the power of repatriations, but also how things are kind of shifting. I always think that these last few years have been a reckoning where people have been kind of waking up, because the individual who had the headdress, he was a private collector. So if you think about it, he could have sold it, he could have done whatever with it, but he wanted to do the right thing, which was give it back to the people. And I think you're kind of seeing a shift, and the key thing that a lot of people talk about is with repatriations is that, it was always limited to the extent of the law, which was that only institutions that receive federal funds NAGPRA applies to, you know. And I will bring this up, I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is the fact that, is that a lot of institutions received federal funding aid from like a federal government, with the CARES Act and probably with the ARPA funds. So institutions that never received federal funds probably did. So now I think there's a way for tribes to finally potentially repatriate from those institutions. So I think that's a key win for individuals in Indian country. And also, I think that once again, it's about doing the right thing. And I think what a lot of times we got to do pressure. And, Yufna and Crystal and the various individuals always put pressure on these institutions to consult with us rather than just talk to us and say, okay, well, we own it, but oh well. So I think a lot of good things are coming. It's just taking a lot of hard work.
So, what are some things you both felt like going into Carlisle in the perspective of Jordan doing the film, but also Crystal, the second time we went around and we had to go back? What were some experiences you guys had?
I think one of the biggest ones is the fact that, um, people don't want us to tell our own stories in a sense, A lot of times it's, I consider a lot of different journalism that you see from different places is story taking, and it's not storytelling. I think what we do as tribal people is storytelling because we tell it from our perspective. But you just see where they don't want us to do those things. So we got a lot of resistance telling the story. But in the end, it worked out because we had the strength of our people on our side. And so to me, it just speaks to this larger idea that a lot of times we have to really be aggressive with the things that we want and the things that we do. If we were passive, none of this stuff would have happened.
Yeah, and for me, just coming into it right when I started working here, and the first time the delegation went, it was a lot of our elders and youth that went to Carlisle, and we had 3 there, and we were only able to bring back 2, and so we had to go the following year, me, Yufna, and Jordan, and 2 other descendants that went, that we had to go back for the 3rd one. And it was just us, the elders said, you guys need to go. And I think because it was really hard, it was emotionally draining, and just also mentally being there in that facility to kind of get an experience of what these kids went through and how we had each other, but sometimes they didn't have anybody. If just like these boys when they went there together, and then they got sick, and so that was just a big learning experience for me, just to be there and to think about sending my own children away, and thinking that they're gonna go get their education, they're gonna be good, they're gonna come back, stronger and educated and help our people. And then, little do we know that they were being treated, or they were not being taken care of as much as we thought they were going to be, and to be sick or to be lonesome, and and just to put yourself in that position while you're there in Carlisle is really, really a hard emotional thing to go through. And then on top of that, with the Army and their restrictions, and you have to follow their protocol, or it was very, how could you say, invasive. If I felt like invasive to me, because they needed to know where we were at all times. We couldn't go anywhere. We needed permission to talk to the camera. They wanted to know, like, even when we're at the hotel, like what time we were getting up, we couldn't go anywhere without them. And we were just on their clock like 24/7, and they were just questioning us all the time. And when we had questions for them, they were very evasive, and, oh, well, I got to talk to so-and-so. And so it was very frustrating for us as, like Jordan said, being able to tell our story and tell our story of what we're going through, what we're experiencing, what our elders were going through at the time. And so it was just really mentally draining and hard. But then it was also, we knew that we had to do it, and that we had to get it done, and we had to remain strong together and hold each other up and just be there for each other to get through this tough time. So I think it was healing in its own way, but also just a very big learning experience of dealing with the U.S. Army.
He has to leave, but people can kind of see from the film, and that's the good thing about this, is that The documentary tells the story with the tribal people's narrative, and I think that's where Jordan was going with that. So it'd be great if we could show that while Jordan's still here, and we can kind of start that conversation also. Colleen, did you want to play the trailer?
When they brought these children here, they took everything away from them.
I imagined them scared, hungry, just trying to understand what was happening.
In Arapaho, we have our own way of life. We live under this pipe and its teachings.
They tried everything to get rid of us. They resorted to taking our children.
Native Americans, we're gone. We don't exist anymore in this nation. We exist only in books, on TV, in museums.
The children were much more vulnerable to all the European diseases.
When one died, and then the next one died, and they all died within a year of each other, They needed each other.
They're buried here, see. They've been here too long. It's time for them to go home. Anxious, at the same time, I don't know. The unknowns over there, That's what I'm thinking about. But I'm ready.
We don't know where we're gonna find it all. And I think we should just stay humble and not think about, or not get too excited.
And I always tell the kids it's okay to cry. I'm excited and I'm anxious. I'm anxious for us to go over there and to get our children and bring them home. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I'm happy. It's just I'm ready for this.
The school was founded by Richard Henry Pratt in 1879. He developed his philosophy of an institution that would train Indian children to become assimilated exclusively in a white community, with industrial training for half a day and academic training for the other half day. So the first thing he did was cut their hair, remove their clothing, and replace it with uniforms.
When I first got here, I walked in that cemetery, and then I could feel the pain, that heavy heart.
A lot of these headstones don't have names. Those are kids that are never going to go home.
How many students came to Carlisle?
We know of 10,700 names.
I want everybody to know what happened to our children in those boarding schools. Wherever they were, there was over 500 boarding schools in the United States.
We have letters from my grandpa who wrote here, and my dad who wrote here, and my uncle who wrote here, requesting for our children back.
It is the first time, the very first time, that any of the Native nations have succeeded taking ownership of this history and taking ownership of their students that they lost and taking them home again.
We're not waiting no longer for anybody to come save us. We're going to save ourselves.
We still rehashing this. Why can't we be focusing on science math, engineering. There's so many other things that we could be focusing on, but we can't do that until this has been, we've healed from it.
Chọn thế sự của 20 years hết này sợ là có sự hết ở chỉ nó hết hết thì we go home.
That's still real hard to watch. Still feels like we're there. So kind of going into the successes of Carlisle has been, we get asked these same questions over and over, but it was really just organizing, staying united and coming together. But I think a lot of the times it was myself really knowing that I had Crystal and Jordan and other people that were going to help me along the way. Because sometimes I'm like, oh man, it's real heavy. And sometimes it's so heavy for me. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I could do this sometimes. And even now, right, watching the film is like still really hard. But what kind of feelings does it bring to you, Jordan and Crystal?
I think that, it's a tough thing to watch, but, American history is very tough to watch. And that's just the reality of it, because there's just so many dark things that happened. And I think it's a very timely thing to be talking about, especially with what happened in Canada, but also last year with what happened with, what was going on south of the border. So these things were happening today still, where families are being taken apart from each other. And that's just the reality. But this film was a very difficult one to make for multiple reasons. But the biggest one being that our people, when you tell your story, you kind of relive it. So I think with our elders and the people who we interviewed, it was really tough for them to talk about this stuff. And we did everything within reason of them, but also it just speaks about how we have to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I still get pretty emotional watching it. I don't know when I'll quit, but it always brings up emotions for me. And just because a lot of our elders who are in that film are no longer with us. And so they really were a big part of, support and backing up Yufna. And, Betty Friday, she was pivotal in helping, and she's no longer here, and she was a tough Arapaho woman. And I really miss her in the office, and she's always on me, but that's what strong women do, and I just really miss them, and so it really makes me emotional. And they told their story, and it's going to be forever, like Jordan said. It's going to be carried on forever in film, and they got to tell their story. And I think that's the most important part of it, is just being able to let it out and to start healing, even though it was really late, but at least they got that peace, and that's what it was for in the end, is just for our elders to heal.
I think that's kind of what repatriation has really come down to. And I think it's something, we always get asked when we do the screening is, what does repatriation mean today? And I think that's kind of what it goes back to, is to have those civil rights as Native Americans, to even be given the opportunity to start the repatriation process. And I think contemporarily today, I think that's what it is. In doing so, repatriations has really, pushed government to government consultation. It's really pushed holding people accountable. And I think kind of like what Jordan said in the beginning was like, we're seeing that shift. We're seeing, those attitudes change. But at the same time, it's just always really being consistent, which is really hard because this work is so heavy. But I think too, one of the things, I feel like you guys are still doing this, a day-to-day work. I'm in doing conservation work now, but it's partly still a part of that. But today you guys are still the ones, making sure that that's happening. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm glad to have been able to work with you guys. That was awesome. And the successes of Carlisle was really internally making great relationships, professional relationships, and really making strong bonds with all of you. And I think that's what this did. I kind of wanted to, while Jordan's still here, to see if other people want or have any questions. I know it's still kind of early, but maybe we can go from there. And is there anything else you or Jordan might want to talk about?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head about how like people talk about repatriation work a lot, but I don't think they really realize how emotionally, mentally, physically, it's very taxing on the individual who does it, and somebody mentioned to me that, I think it was you, Yufna, and you said that somebody told you that, like with repatriations that they choose you. And that always stuck in my head, and I think you, in a sense, you give a little to bring them, to give them back their strength in their life to come back home. So it takes a little out of you. I just remember there's times where we do the repatriations and you just be exhausted at the end and you just be tired. I remember at the end of Carlisle, I just felt like I could sleep for like a week. And people don't see that part. So like self-care is really important, and praying and smudging and all those different things are very key because it's what protects you, but also keeps you going because you hit so many roadblocks. And I think that's something that, I think that's something I stress to everybody is the power of self-care. It's very important with this work, and just to take care of yourself in good ways and be kind to yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Jordan. And that's something that, I've carried and I've learned from here, into my home is just, strong mind, strong body, and, strong spirituality. And it really, takes a lot from you, but you also get a lot from it, and it's really a job in of itself, but it's always, I always told myself, because growing up when I was talking, and how when you're little you talk with your cousins and you're like, this is what I want to do, I want to help our res this way, I want to do this for our people, and how you had these little conversations when you were little. And now when I go back and think about it, I always tell my husband, man, this is what I was talking about when I was little, what I wanted to do. And I can't complain because it's happening. It's happening. It's hard work, but and it's draining sometimes, but it's totally worth it. And like, this is everything that I was wanting to do for our people. I'm doing it now. And so I always have to remember, I have to be careful with what I say. But I just feel like, just great support system with Jordan and Yufna, and we were always going in different directions, but we're together, our hearts are in the same place. That's how I feel with all of this work. And it's all for our people. It really is. And it's to help heal our people so we can move forward and be good and, raise leaders. And that's what it's about. So is there any other questions?
Can we maybe start getting questions through the chat, and then if anybody wants to ask anything, now's the time.
Well, I didn't mean to put myself on the stage, but here I am. I thought while we're waiting for questions from the audience, I could ask a question of the panelists. I saw in the video that there was some young people that were involved in that repatriation work, and I just wondered how you're bringing the young people in your community into this heavy work, and how do you share with them, the things that need to be shared with them without potentially exposing them to things at such a young age, or just wondering how that is going in your community.
So for one thing, before we had started to invite the youth, that was a huge conversation we had, was how much of that are we going to expose them to? How much of that are they going to be able to cope with? And one of the things I'm always pushing is all tribes have a white buffalo. Well, maybe all tribes, some tribes have a white buffalo recovery tribal program, and they have a program called Mending Broken Hearts. And what Mending Broken Hearts does is it pertains to grief, closure, and intergenerational trauma, basically, that tribes go through. And so we went through this training, I think like 3, 4 times, 5 times, I think. And throughout that time, we were getting ready. We were getting our youth ready. We were getting our employees ready. We were getting our elders ready. So when we went to Carlisle, we weren't going to get sick there. We knew we had our traditional practices we could deal with, and we knew that they had to learn ahead of time. So they did plant gathering, medicine gathering before we went. And so they were being really kind of just taken along the way and just showed and practice it and exercise that spirituality. And so implementing them into the film and showing them, what they needed to do also is this other learning process. But a lot of them came away from it learning. If you're able to see the documentary on PBS, I mean, it's longer. I think it's 55 minutes, Jordan. Yeah. And so it kind of goes along that process and talks about, the youth being there. And so if you get a chance, watch it. But traditionally, the elders taught them, and you can kind of see in the trailer that what they needed to know and hear. And when we went there, we were ready. We were mentally, spiritually, and physically ready to do that repatriation. But it took time and it took work.
I think that's right on, because we often don't talk about the work that has to happen before the work that has to happen when we get there, right? And a lot of times that's the spiritual work that isn't on, paperwork, and it's not written down. It's the things that our communities are doing to prepare spiritually for those things, and being sure that those protocols are in place. And so those people aren't getting sick, and things have to happen in certain ways. And so I think that's right on. And I'm really happy you brought that up, because there's a lot of spiritual work that goes into preparing for repatriation that is only known in our own communities. So we do have a couple of questions from the audience now, and I'm going to pull them up so you can see them. Oh, okay. So when they're in the chat, they don't get as big on the screen. I'll just read it. So this question comes from Jennifer, and she's saying she's wondered how through the NAGPRA inventory process has been at some of the museums in our region that are short-staffed. What have your experiences been like regarding transparency with museums? Has the cooperation been good, bad, or a problem?
I'll let Jordan and Crystal answer that, if that's okay, guys.
Is this one regarding well, I mean, the relationship it really varies from museum to museum. We have a really great relationship with the Museum of Discovery in Fort Collins. They're working on a hide with us right now. They've been amazing. We've worked with the Museum of Boulder. They've been very kind to us as well. But then you hit those other institutions, such as the Field Museum, that haven't been so good. We've been actively trying to repatriate some skulls there since 2018. And the conversation we had with them was, because it listed in their inventory, they had 4 Arapaho skulls. So we went there, as a group, me, Yufna, Crystal, and then the director at the time, Devin Oldman, and basically it got us nowhere, and we got hit with a lot of resistance and this view that we were just these little kids who didn't know what we were doing. But also, they basically said, well, we don't think they're Arapaho. So after that, we started conversations with them more, and I had an email exchange with the NAGPRA coordinator there, and I just asked again. I'm like, well, you list us as that. Why aren't you gonna consider doing that? And their view is basically that, well, they were mislabeled wrong. But mind you, none of the staff is there alive to verify that. We felt like there's enough evidence to prove that they were Arapaho, but they're just like, no, they're not. And so I raised the question. I said, so basically what you're saying to me is you have a faulty catalog system. Like basically you can't vouch for all the items you have belonging to those source communities, which is, if you think about it, that's a game changer right there, and it just looks horrible on their part. So, we've continued conversations. We visit the Field Museum on December 1st and 2nd, and we're going to have bigger talks with them and also with the president. They have a new president. But, those are very important things because I still have so many questions about that. And then also, I think a lot of times these museums want individuals to show up, just look at the collection, and then just take a photo and leave, But the Northern Arapaho tribe isn't like that. We show up and we were like, we want these items back. So yeah, that's an update right now. So we'll be there December 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, and like Jordan said, we've had really good relationships with some museums and not so great with the others. There's actually been some museums that have just, without requesting, they've just sent us their inventory, and we're like, we would like you guys to come and look at our inventory, which was great. I was like, wow, we're getting some, and that's just been within the past few years that they've really wanted us to come and be a part of it. And so I think that's good. It's going in a good direction. Like when we were in Carlisle, we went back for repatriation in DC, and one of our tribal members, and she was at Dartmouth, and she went down to do a field trip to the Penn Museum, and then she found Black Coal's pipe there. And so we happened to be in the area, so we went to go look at it. But even at that museum there, when we showed up and Yufna walked in and was like, I'm Yufna Shoulder Wolf. We heard the pipes here. We want to look at it. We want to look at your inventory. Even at that part of them and how we were treated, even then, just to go in and look, and just hearing little comments like, I can't believe they're here, kind of thing. And so we just get it everywhere. And like Jordan said, sometimes what I think museums think that, elders, which is good, elders go in and they do the consultations, but then when we're coming in and we're not like fitting that image of being older elders, and then that was kind of the treatment we got with Field Museum, is they just looked down on us because we weren't at the elder status. But we were given that permission to go out and repatriate these items. And so, and that was kind of the treatment we got there. And so now I think with all of this, on December 1st, we are taking our elders, we're taking our council, we're taking our elders, we're taking, a big delegation now to just set the standard and say, we're serious about this. Your catalog system, you guys told us it was Arapaho. And now you're going back, and you can't go back because, in your catalog system, it originally says Arapaho, and that's what we go off of. And so I can't wait to have that bigger conversation in a few weeks here.
With that, I have to leave early. There's a lot of different things going on today, but I just want to thank you. And, and in the end, I just really want to thank you all for your work. And also, if you all have great questions for really, you know, the two people who did a lot of the work, you know, Yufna and Crystal, they did great. I'm just lucky that I got to step in and help film it and share the story in a larger audience. But you know, these are the women who really did all the work. And with that said, you know, my last plug is that the film will air nationally on PBS November 23rd on Independent Lenses on PBS. So please join us and share it, and it's emotional, but it's very important. So I thank you all, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you, Chairman Dresser. We appreciate your time and participation today. We do have some more questions, Yufna and Crystal. One other question is, because you mentioned the white buffalo training earlier, someone from the audience is wondering where that training is available.
So I think this would have been a good Jordan question, but I think one of the things is it's a national program, and I think it's actually out of Colorado. If you Google white buffalo mending broken hearts, it'll come up and it'll show what that program is, and contact at the bottom, and that's where our tribe had really kind of implemented into that practice into our tribe, and really kind of made it ours with our own traditional practices. So it is there available. You just got to contact them. If it's not within your own tribe, Google it, and sorry to just say Google it, right? But it's there. It's White Buffalo Recovery, Mending Broken Hearts. It's a really good program.
Thank you. Taking a circle back to the previous conversation that we were just having about the Field Museum and your upcoming trip, someone in the comments wanted to remind you, as Shannon, the association's CEO and attorney, often says that it's up to the institution to provide proof. Basically, the burden of proof would be on them to prove to you that those ancestors are not Arapaho, versus your delegation showing up and having to prove that they are. So that's quite a conversation we could probably dive into. But there is another question in the chat that we can talk about. And I'll be able to show this one on stage. So this question comes from Irene. And Irene says, thank you for doing this work and documenting it. What was the process like to film the visit to Carlisle? What have been some of the responses to the documentary so far?
I think that would have been a good Jordan question. Crystal, do you want to try it?
Yeah, just what I know, what Jordan went through, Jordan and Jeff and the whole film crew. They did do a lot of work and preparation, and spoke with the Army beforehand of the things they could and couldn't do. And so they had this whole plan going into there. And for the first trip with, you know, the larger delegation that went, they did get a lot of pushback. And, you know, a lot of things the Army said that the film crew could do, but then they took it back and said they couldn't. And so there was a lot of loud words being spoken by Jordan. He threw a fit, basically. That's what he did. He threw a fit. Because they weren't allowing the film to film. And then for the first trip, I know there was like so much media coverage there going on. For the second trip, when we went back, there was nobody. Like, it was just the film crew, which was awesome, because I was worried about the media coming in again. But it was just the film crew, but it was the same thing. They had a plan. They okayed it with the Army. Once we got there, they kind of just went back on everything and was like, oh, well, we got to talk to so-and-so. We have to get permission. Oh, you can film in the afternoon. And when we get to the afternoon, they wouldn't let him film. And so it was just a lot of that going on, which was very frustrating. And so that's kind of, I think, why you'll see just in the film, there's not much about the second trip, the party's second delegation going. There's not much because we couldn't get much. There really wasn't and there was a lot of pushback from the Army, and it was just they wouldn't let the experts speak anymore. The ones Sonny Trimble that was there, and they really we tried to have a lunch with them separately from the Army. We just wanted to take them out to eat and to tell them thank you, and the Army was right there, right behind us, following us and right around us while we were eating. So it was very frustrating having that having that oversight on their part, and it was very invasive, like I said before, and it was difficult. It was really difficult. I had to keep my comments to myself a lot of the times. And then what have been some of the responses to the documentary? I've heard nothing but good things. It really brings out emotions and sometimes trauma from certain people, and then it opens them up to talk more about what they've experienced or what they've heard their grandparents went through. And so it's great that it's starting a conversation, it's starting a dialogue, and I think that's the best thing that's going to happen with this film. And so I'm excited for everybody to watch it on November 23rd. And while we're in Carlisle, Chicago, the 1st and 2nd, we'll be at the Northwestern University December 3rd. So there'll be a screening there, and me and Jordan will be there to answer questions. So we'll be there. And the ironic thing, that's founded by Governor Evans of Colorado and he was the one during Sand Creek Massacre for our people. And so his family founded that university, which is ironic where we'll be. But that's kind of history coming full circle, I guess. So we'll be there. So if you guys are in Illinois and want to go listen and see the film there and watch it with us, that'd be great.
Thank you. We have another question. Let's see. This one comes from Megan West, and Megan's saying, Jordan was a guest speaker in my museum studies coursework at Johns Hopkins last year. It was wonderful to talk to him about the struggles in repatriation as an emerging museum professional. Are you all doing anything else with museum studies programs?
Like specifically any, that's probably a Crystal and Jordan question. Crystal.
Okay. So right now, there are a few things we're looking into. Like I said, we don't have a museum right now or a repository to store these things. So we're kind of in the process of trying to get our nonprofit together to start fundraising for that. And so that's one thing that me and Jordan are working on. Another part is a lot of Jordan's work, with what was ours before Home from School and then Home from School, and he's doing another MMIP film. And so just getting that out into the public, into our schools, has created a lot of interest with our youth. And so it's great because there's a lot of people have recently graduated from high school here, and they'll come up and I'll be like, well, I'm going into museum studies. I want to be a curator. I want to be an archaeologist. So we've been hearing that from our youth that are coming up. So it's really exciting because I'm like, great, I can't wait till for you to graduate because you got a job. I'm going to hire you. Don't worry. And so I'm just excited for all of our youth that are coming up and that want to be involved and want to continue this work. It's really important. And that was one of the things that I was talking to Yufna and Jordan about on a panel before, is like, when you think about it, it's like 20 years from now, we're going to be the elders, we're going to be up there. And so, you know, what are we going to pass on? And, you know, we have to learn that now. We have to put that work in now. And so I think that's the direction we're all going in, and we're all together on this, and it just makes us stronger. And I really appreciate, and I'm just grateful for all the great work that everybody's doing.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat. This one comes from Teresa. Do you think museums will be more responsive after the documentary? What strategies have you found to be the most effective with museums? It's a great question.
I think in a small way it'll hold. I think some federal agencies will realize that there are tribes out there holding them accountable to repatriate. And I think that's what the good thing and the successful thing about this film does, is it shows our story, but realize how many other people share the same story, and that they want things back and they're working hard to make that happen. And I think that in the end, I feel like it's going to come full circle for them also, but really making sure that they move forward and are able to do that is kind of what this conference is about, you know, learning those strategies, knowing the best practices, knowing what guidelines, knowing what was successful, and using that to your own advantage and figuring out for yourselves how that's going to help you be successful. Crystal?
Yeah, I think I've already kind of seen the, just from going to some of these showings, these screenings, and being there with the audience, you know, face to face. We just did one in Jackson last week, and just having everybody there afterwards and being able to talk to you. And we stayed late until afterwards because everybody wanted to kind of like ask us questions. What can I do to help? What can I do to support our program? You know, and it really, they were like, I didn't realize everything that tribes went through, and I'm so sorry. That was kind of the, you know, the summary of everything. But how can we help? How can we be better allies and to help your program? And so that was kind of the big conversation that we had there. And it's really been a lot of the publicity from these films that Jordan has done. And I can say, like, it has helped shed a positive light on our office. And for people to call, we even had somebody call from Arkansas and was asking about repatriations. And so, you know, it's getting out there. Our office is getting out there, and, you know, as much as we want to help, you know, everybody, and just to get them on a good path of what needs to be done. And like I said, like Yufna said, this conference is really helping me build those networks and those connections to just keep going forward and trying to help everybody in their efforts.
Thank you. While we're waiting for more questions to come in, I have a question. Will the documentary be available for like other tribal communities to use as part of maybe their education in terms of, you know, I think sometimes our communities aren't exactly aware of what repatriation work really looks like on the ground level, and what some of those protocols and things are. And I just wonder if there are other tribal representatives who might benefit from having access to the documentary. Where might they find it and get it?
Is it home from school? Right?
It's CalderaProductions.com. And that's kind of where the information is. But there's an option on here that says you can host a screening. So if you wanted to host it somewhere, then you could contact them and they'll arrange that for you. I can type it in the chat too if you want me to.
We've got some comments in the chat too that aren't in the Q&A portion, but they're in the chat, and I wanna try to pull them up. Okay, here we go. So this comment comes from Jen Shannon, and she's saying, let them know about the Museum Studies program in Boulder. She's happy to answer questions, and they're proactive about NAGPRA and would be happy to talk with students about the program. So as you're all working with the youth in your community about museum studies, keep this program in mind. Okay, I do have another question while we're waiting. I'm full of questions apparently. And please, to the audience, if you want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A portion of the chat. My question is this. I have seen many times the idea to create a documentary about repatriation efforts, and then I've seen those efforts fail and miserably because filming a documentary about repatriation efforts it's difficult to get it right? Because you want to showcase the spirituality, but not too much, because there's things that need to be kept inside your own communities. But you also need to be able to express the pain and the things that you're going through as tribal people, bringing home your ancestors and objects that were taken without free, prior, and informed consent long ago, and the burden of that work. But it also needs to be able to showcase what the work from the museum looks like when you're working with agencies and those representatives. And it's like a lot of things have to be equal and good to get the documentary right. And I've seen a couple that have been very successful, and I've seen some that were just not good. And I just wondered, like, as you were preparing to create this documentary, and I know Jordan, our chairman, Dresser, was a large part of it, and he's no longer here today, but I'm hoping that maybe you two could speak to that. When your community was getting ready to make the documentary, what sort of priorities were involved? What did you really want to showcase? What did you kind of scale back? And were there times where you were unsure if you got it right, or just kind of wondering a little more about that documentary, because it really does highlight the success, which is what we're talking about today. And so it really is incredible to be able to bring ancestors home from Carlisle, one institution or one place that has historically not been returning the ancestors there. So say all that to say, could you speak more to the documentary maybe?
So before we started the initial trip, the concerns the elders had was cultural sensitivity, and how much, like you said, how much are we going to show? How much of the trauma are we going to show? How much are we going to talk about? Which for me really came down to it don't focus so much on the abuses there, like the sexual abuse, the financial abuse, the physical abuse, the mental abuse that went on there. But having to sit there in elders' houses and see them cry and be a part of that was like really hard. And so one of the things that we decided, it was kind of ahead of time, was they weren't gonna share those parts because it was so personal. It was still a healing journey for them. And they were getting closure through mending broken hearts. And so our biggest obstacle was cultural sensitivity. And it was a good thing that we had Jordan, because he understood as a tribal member what we should share, what we shouldn't, and how much. And that was really important, because we wanted to give the ancestors as much respect as we could and still honor them, but at the same time still bring the audience along with us. And I think when you see the film, even though it may take in 5 years, it was really good. It's really the film is really successful. It I honestly can't even watch it because my dad's passed away, Betty's passed away, Crawford's passed away. All of these elders I work with have passed away, and that tribute to them throughout the whole film, and knowing that they're still there. I like when Jordan says it's on film, it's going to be there forever, and I really like that because they come back to life then, and they're still, it feels like they're still there. They're still teaching us from what they're saying on the film. If you guys get a chance, watch it. And just, if you need to talk to someone after, find a trusted relative, find someone who can support you. But it is really emotional. Crystal, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think like what Yufna said is just, it was hard for Jordan. He was very diligent. I've watched him and Sophie and Jeff go through the film piece by piece. And like Yufna said, it was a very good thing that Jordan was involved from the beginning. And what he's always said is things just fell into place, with documentary work. It's like, it's not planned or anything, but the way the timeline went with everything and they were able to film, that just all fell into place. And he couldn't have predicted, any of that, but they were lucky enough to be there to film it. And then to go through and to have him on there, he comes from a very traditional family. And so he kind of knows like our protocols, and things that are sensitive and what he should and shouldn't show. So he kind of already had that direction. And then working with Yufna and elders and just making sure, is this okay that we share this and we share this, or should we pull it back a little bit? And so that's why it kind of took a while to put the film together, because he was always checking and making sure everything was okay and that he wasn't overstepping any boundaries. He did a really good job, and he was always like, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And always involving everybody into the film, making sure everybody was okay with it before they move forward. And so he was like that all the way up to the end, right before the film was finished. He was like, just making sure this is all good. What do you think? And so it was always a collaborative effort. And I think that's the success of the film, is that everybody's inputs in there. And it's a really, it shows a lot, but not too much. And when you're a tribal person, you kind of know what that means. So, but it's really good. It's a good film, and I can't wait for everybody to see it November 23rd. So just tune in and let us know what you think.
Thank you. There's another question in the chat. I'll show on stage again. This question comes from Teresa. With at least 10,000 children being sent to boarding schools, are there other schools you suspect may have Arapaho remains that are yet unidentified?
Yeah, so we recently got a directive from the BIA for our own reservation to do a survey of the schools that are here. We have 3, and then the ownership of their land, and then where their cemeteries are located. And then we got approval from our council to get a ground penetrating radar, because we have heard over the few years, there's people that are buried in different places on the reservation, not specifically in cemeteries either. And so we have a lot of work cut out for ourselves. There's just to make sure that we're identifying, and me and Jordan, we started this back in 2018, kind of documenting and mapping cemeteries, just to make sure that our ancestors were never forgotten. Because we found out, through our own family cemeteries, there was a lot of elders that knew who was buried in those old graves, and they didn't have markers on them. And I was like, what are we gonna do? Like when Grandpa passes away, and then he's not there to tell us who that person is. And so we had to really figure out a system within our own reservation of how to document everything. And then this was even before, the residential school finding, unmarked graves and stuff. And we were kind of already on that path of doing that. And it's been a lot of work. I didn't realize how much work it was going to take. In the first cemetery with St. Stephen's Catholic School, this was in 2018, before the pandemic, and there was over 2,000 graves, and that's up to recent now because it's still being used. But there's over 2,000 graves we documented there. And there's many more because we haven't been able to update it since COVID hit, and we lost a lot of our elders and our people. So we're still on the work of doing that and getting our ground penetrating radar and making sure, because, we have 2.2 million acres on this reservation. It's a lot of work, but we'll get it done and we'll just keep going forward.
That's incredible. I remember a time when on my tribe, we just wanted to do GPR on a very small section of land, and we ended up doing GPR and resistivity at the same time. And just that small piece of land, it took weeks and weeks and weeks to process the data. I can't even imagine what, over 2 million acres worth of data is going to look like for you all. But wow, that's going to be a lot of work. So not a question, more of a statement there. Let's see if we have any other questions from the audience. This isn't a question, but I do think that we should show it because this is from Jen Shannon again, and just saying thanks for sharing, and that they're going to make time to watch the documentary. That's awesome. Does anyone else have a question? Here's one. This is also from Irene. How are you leveraging the PBS broadcast to support your work? Like op-eds, panels, petitions? It's a great question.
I think that's more of a Jordan question too, because he's more of doing a lot of the social media or the media kits. But I think even just for bringing, like we kind of talked about before, is how it's bringing awareness, how it's bringing forward a lot of what we are doing, but also what other tribes are doing. When I first started this, I picked it back up from the generations that had done it. It felt real lonely. It felt like we're the only ones. There's only a little bit of us. I think there was like 8 of us. I put a small in the newspaper, Wind River News, and I was like, I'm gonna have a Carlisle meeting, invited people, and all of a sudden I was getting phone calls from different people. And then when we had the meeting, people from out of state came, and I'm like, I thought it was just us. And so it really kind of reassured me that people were interested, we weren't alone, and that there was so much support there. And I think moving forward, what this film is going to do is kind of reopen those doors, and not just for us, but for the other tribes who have wanted their families back. The second time we went, I think we saw the Blackfeet, Crystal. And then the family there, we got to see them for a bit, but we didn't really get to talk to them very much or anything. And then it's been other families, other tribes. So it's been real interesting. I think the film can really speak for itself, and a lot of the screenings we've had already were really hard and difficult for us. But at the same time, really just hoping people heal from it and realize repatriation is doable in whatever means and ways that we ask as tribes for our civil rights to be held, whether it's, asking for artifacts or our land back or whatever it is, you know, we should be held to that same government to government level, and we should be consulted. And, you know, if possible, I'm hoping that, you know, as far as petitions and all this other stuff, we kind of did that ahead of time before the actual repatriation. But even after, you know, there's still that support, you know, there's still that knowledge. And I think that's one thing we'll carry with us our whole lives, is just knowing what it felt like to experience this. And it's been real surreal for me. Sometimes I'll, you know, big projects, right? You go to sleep and then you wake up thinking, all right, I'm going to work on it. And then I got to remind myself in the morning, like, it's done. We brought them home. So it's been real surreal for me sometimes, because I still feel like I got to get up and run and do all this stuff. But it's been interesting. But I'm kind of glad to see Jordan and Crystal going and doing what they're needing to do next, and really just carry that torch, carry that legacy.
Did you want to add anything to that, Crystal?
Yeah, I think just for the PBS broadcast, in terms, Jordan's been doing a lot of the media work and just putting it together with the production company. And I've just been on a few panels so far, and then we'll be in the panel in Chicago. So that's pretty much what I've been doing, is just some panels, being on some panels. As far as petitions, I haven't heard anything, but you know, there's always, we're here, we're available. You know, if any other tribes is going through something similar, we can always lend our support, our hand, you know, advice that we may have. You know, we're not in this alone, just like she said, you know. And so we want to be there to be a good support system for other tribes and other families who are taking that step to go to Carlisle and get their ancestors back.
This is not necessarily a question, but it is in the chat, so I'm going to show it on stage. This, the comment is that you definitely aren't alone. We have several screenings around here at the Carlisle Theater, and Circle Legacy Center has been sending out information about it wherever we can, about the documentary, I'd assume. That's good. Let's see. We have another question in the chat. This one comes from Lauren. Yufna and Crystal, thank you for all that you have done thus far. You are both truly blessed to be able to do the work, share your thoughts, and educate those wanting and willing to learn and listen. I am truly proud of all of you. Blessings. I guess that wasn't a question, but I love the comment. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. That's really nice. I have a question. Because I know, you know, when some tribes and their communities are kind of just starting this work out, or maybe they've been doing it quite some time, but they haven't been successful at repatriating from a place like Carlisle so far. I just wondered if you have any advice, like if you were going to give advice to those who are starting this process or seeking out their relatives who may be at boarding schools, since this will likely be a thing for a lot of tribes moving forward, especially from boarding schools. What kind of advice would you give, or any thoughts you might share with those folks?
I think when I first started the really trying to set up the office, was our office was figuring out how to be funded, but also looking for resources, and not just funding, but people and buildings, and start networking to make those allies, because it's really going to be helpful when you reach out and have that help. Is going to be really also really helpful. And then the other thing is coming up with your own tribal protocols and policies, because for one thing, we never wrote ours. We never had to. But one of the things I ran into with the military was they wanted to see legally, logistically, how we were going to proceed. And so really having to figure out for ourselves, what are our priorities? What are some goals? How are we going to do this? And it went in phases. So really we focused, one of our priorities was protecting our spirituality, our going into it mentally, knowing we're ready, and then keep in mind all of our elders were veterans. And so working with the military, they had their own protocols they knew they had to follow as veterans. But really just focusing on how your own office is going to move forward, and kick around the question, what does it look like 10 years from now? What does it look like, for the future? Because it's going to go by really quickly. And when you look back, you're going to think, wow, we did all this, But really just setting those things up is our priorities for your office. Look for resources, and making sure your own tribal protocols and policies are written if you have to, and just getting the support of your leaders is really important too. Crystal, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I think just building that good foundation of protocols, policies, and having that direction from your elders is really key. And that to always involve them, to always make sure it's okay with them. And like she said, I learned from her. she led the way. Yufna led the way, and just sitting back and watching her and observing her was really nice to see how she interacted with her elders. She gained their trust and their support, and she took it and she just ran with it, and she had the back of our elders. They were, there with her every step of the way. And it was really good to see that, because she needed a lot of it. It was tough work for her, and she went through so much. And I think that just being there, that support system, and knowing like we can do this and we can do it together, was really, really the main force behind it. And it was great to have other tribes give us encouragement to say, keep going. There was tribes that met them in Carlisle, and welcomed them, and they fed us, they took us to eat. And so just having that support system over there too was really great.
All right. Well, I want to remind the audience that we do have some active polls going. If you could take a moment to answer those. And Crystal or Yufna, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience before we close up?
You want to go first, Crystal?
Yeah, go. So, I think about the work that we do, that we continue to do. I never forget about who paved the way, our ancestors, our grandparents, and everything that they've been involved in, how they were treated, and things like that. It doesn't leave my mind. And, we're very fortunate to grow up now. My dad was in boarding school, and that's how close it is. I'm first generation not to go to a boarding school. I never went to a boarding school. And to just have that so close, a lot of people think it was a long time ago, but no, it's now, and we still have those effects. And I just really, I try to keep that in my mind and push forward in the work that we do, because, it's dealing a lot with the federal agencies and trying to get them to that understanding of the reason why, where we want this and we're recommending this is because we're not just saying it just to say it, just to stop development or anything, or, it's because, we're listening to our elders, we're listening to what they have to say and what affected them and what they need to heal, and how that's going to make our whole community heal, how that's going to bring forward, healing and how we are going to get those anthropologists, how we're going to get those archaeologists, how we're going to get those doctors, those lawyers here, you know. And so that's how we're going to start, and that we recognize that, and that's what we need. We need it. We need to go back to our ways, and we need to bring it back to heal us. So just thank you for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all your kind words. I think our information's in the chat. If you have any questions for me, send me an email, anything. So haho.
So in closing, I just want to tell Crystal, thank you for being here today. Want to tell Jordan too. I know you guys are both very busy, and I really appreciate you guys' voice being a part of this because it's really important. And in closing, I think a lot of what Crystal talked about was really, really true. Is we need to remember to be humble. That a lot of work we do is sacred, and the holistic view of how we do our work is new to Western society. And so we need to re-implement, decolonize, and really ask ourselves as tribal people, what does that look like? And really find those allies who are willing to help us, who are willing to hear us, who are willing to promote us and show us that, hey, you know what, you guys, and give us platforms like this to be able to be a part of, and other platforms, safe spaces, and really understand that a lot of the time our elders were survivors of boarding schools, but a lot of time our stories aren't shared because of we always were afraid of retribution. We were always afraid of punishment. You know, they took our kids, you know, they took our food, they took our land, they took all of our resources. And so slowly getting that back and bringing it back to the tribes is where we're at. And so I really appreciate everybody who takes these issues seriously and work towards them every day, because this work ain't easy. I really want to thank everybody and have a great rest of. Thank you. Ho ho.